President Joe Biden quickly responded when the Supreme Court last week called for him to end his student loan forgiveness under the so-called HEROES, the Higher Education Relief Opportunities for Students Act of 2003. And shocker, Biden isn't stopping the socialism. His new move will see him drop the HEROES tack and shift to forgiveness via a dusty, disastrous 1965 federal statute that will continue to make you and your progeny pay. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV, and here's the story. In the case of Biden et al. V. Nebraska et al., the Supreme Court last week ruled in favor of the government of Nebraska in its attempt to stop Biden's Department of Education from continuing to suspend demand for college loan payments. The Nebraska legal team, and by the way, the state of Nebraska is a partner with a corporation that handles student loans. Well, the Nebraska legal team argued that because the national health emergency that Donald Trump unconstitutionally invoked in March of 2020 was called to an end by Biden earlier this year, the already shoehorned HEROES Act, ideally supposed to apply to military personnel, no longer can be used as a justification to stop collecting government-dealt college loans. The majority on the Supreme Court agreed with Nebraska's argument, and that has sent the Biden administration scrambling to continue their welfarist practice of making us taxpayers cover the student loan obligations of other people. Misty Severi reports for the Washington Examiner on what things look like now. Quote, Biden said his next move would be through the use of the 1965 Higher Education Act, which gives Education Secretary Miguel Cardona the authority to compromise, waive, or release any right, title, claim, lien, or demand, however acquired, including any equity or any right of redemption. And so, rather than demand repayment of the loans the feds gave to millions of students over the years, Biden wants Cardona to waive or release the recipients from obligations to pay, and of course, make us and our progeny pay. In fact, this shift in policy is far more disastrous for us taxpayers now if they do this, because under the HEROES rationale, the former rationale, Biden and his pals could only delay payment. Now they can do much more. Severi notes that under this new paradigm, Education Secretary Cardona already has, quote, finalized a repayment plan that includes lowering the amount of money borrowers need to repay in each check, cutting the amount from 10% to 5% of their discretionary income. It will also allow many borrowers to make $0 in monthly payments. Zero. And it will not charge borrowers unpaid monthly interest if they make their monthly payment, according to a White House fact sheet. And that's not all. The new Biden plan, enacted completely through executive branch so-called authority, will see federal mandates applied to corporations like the Nebraska Loan Company that was part of the recent Supreme Court focus. Quote, another change is the creation of a 12-month on-ramp repayment program that will remove the threat of default for loan recipients who are unable to pay their bills. The Department of Education will not refer those borrowers who miss payments to credit agencies for a year as they readjust to making payments again. How nice. Nothing is as reassuring to state-level politicians and the corporations with which they work, such as Nebraska, than imagining the prospect of another year of non-payments that can't even be handled by credit agencies. It's very easy to balance the books with that new factor right in there. But hey, why get angry? This is to help students, right? It's a way to make loan recipients more comfortable after not having to pay for 3 years. That must be very, very trying, right? Quote, the White House encouraged borrowers to repay the loans if they can, but it said the new repayment program was to help borrowers adjust after the 3-year repayment pause during the COVID-19 pandemic. Here is what is missed in the Biden White House and, in fact, in the entire debate about the college loans and the HEROES Act. First, the HEROES Act. There is no enumerated power in the U.S. Constitution that allows the feds to reshape, rework, pay for, or subsidize the payment of private loans in the United States. As then Congressman David Crockett explained circa 1830, handing out money in such a manner is not allowed by the so-called rules of the Constitution, and it would require an amendment to make it so. Second, the feds don't have any power to handle student loans in any way at all. They can't issue them, adopt them, or subsidize them. They can't make rules as to how private loans will be issued if there were private loans in question, and they can't claim any moral prerogative to rob from Peter to pay Paul's college debt or reduce his penalties. Third, the president cannot call an emergency. Period. In times of international conflict or conflict with violent agents from outside the U.S., the Congress can declare war or issue letters of marque and reprisal in order to let the president hire mercenaries to fight non-state adversaries. Within the U.S., there is no such thing as a federally declared emergency, and the closest one can come to anything resembling that general situation appears in Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, which you and I can read, and so can the feds, if they want to bother abiding by their so-called rule book. It states, quote, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion, and on application of the legislature or of the executive when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. And they mean application from the state legislature or the state executive, not Washington, D.C. To pretend that anyone on the federal level can simply declare an emergency and then suspend the Constitution is to play in a dangerous fantasy world. Likewise, to believe that there can be such a thing as a Secretary of Education itself is to delude oneself. I've spelled out the dark, delusional history of U.S. involvement in college tuition and college loans for MRC-TV. Well, of course, doubtless the Biden administration wouldn't like you to read any of that stuff. But of course, I hope you'll pass it on to other people, because it's at times like this that folks can understand things with greater clarity, even as the politicians are working to give students a lighter loan burden. And of course, put the burden on our backs. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Please like and subscribe. Watch us on Rumble, where they don't censor us. And please give us the thumbs up and share these videos far and wide. That's very, very key. You can always find us at MRCTV.org. That's MRCTV.org. And while you're there, please visit the MRC Store to get some great items and help the Media Research Center. And please consider donating to the Media Research Center in its 36th year in fighting for freedom. You can also find us on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter. And on Twitter, I'm at Gard Goldsmith. And on Gab, I'm at Gardner Goldsmith. For MRC TV, thanks so much. I'm Gardner Goldsmith.